It's a somber reminder that soldiers, whether they're active duty, reserve, or National Guard, our soldiers are the sword and the shield of the United States of America.
We know these men and women, they're willing to protect 100% of our freedom by sacrificing their own life. But you never want to see this happen on our own streets.
They are the heroes of this day, and we must remember them on this day and every day, and their families and the sacrifice they have made.
FBI director today after the shooting of two National Guards troops a few blocks from the White House. There is some reporting, we haven't matched it yet, that the Joint Terrorism Task Force is beginning to look at this as a possible act of terrorism. NBC News put out a report saying the FBI will initially investigate the shooting as a possible act of terrorism. Two senior U.S. law enforcement officials said. The officials said the suspect, who alleged to have used a handgun, has been initially identified as an Afghan national. Law enforcement officials are still trying to confirm all the person's details, they said. Again, we're trying to get our own independent confirmation of this. It's one element of the investigation. We'll start there with our panel. Fox News chief political analyst Brit Hume, USA Today White House correspondent Francesca Chambers, and Fox News contributor Mark Thiessen. Brit, obviously it would add a big different look at this. It's a tragedy either way, as those National Guard troops were attacked.
Yeah, there's some reports that he shouted Allahu Akbar, a phrase that we've become painfully familiar with from Muslim extremists through the age of terrorism. That would probably short-circuit what would have otherwise been rather a poisonous debate about motive here. If it turns out to be an act of terror, that puts it in a different category for sure. But this was about as cold-blooded an attempted murder as we could imagine. No justification for it in any way, and one hopes and trusts that people will not try to do so.
Yeah. And Mark, do you think it emboldens the efforts to put National Guard troops in other places? Does it affect it at all?
Well, I mean, you're already seeing that the president has said, or Secretary Hicks said, they said we're going to increase the deployments in D.C. I don't think Donald Trump is going to back down. And look, these brave men and women, what they've done for the residents of the district and all of us who live around that area, I mean, double-digit reductions in everything from violent crime to carjackings to burglaries to armed robbery to homicide. They've made us all feel safer, and it's just they're such wonderful patriots who step forward and risk their lives every day at home and abroad to keep us safe. And I think some of the things that have been said about them in recent days have really been troubling. You had Jasmine Crockett the other day saying that they're engaged in slave patrols and targeting black people. And even Alyssa Slotkin said the other day she was worried that a National Guardsman would shoot an American. Instead, the opposite was happened. So I think we need to give them deference and treat them like the heroes they are.
I want to turn topics now to some positive news. We just heard from David Spunt from the president's point of view, positive heading into Thanksgiving Day. Legal reaction to this case in Georgia being dropped. Take a listen.
This motion by the prosecutor, Skandalakis, is not a partisan screed. You would not read this and say, oh, this guy loves Trump, this guy hates Trump. Regardless of this prosecutor's view on the evidence, which, again, I think is fairly mixed, there's just the practical and constitutional issue. There is no possible way under our Constitution as it exists to have a trial, a criminal prosecution and trial of the sitting president.
So the prosecutor, Francesca, puts out the statement, this entire case from the initiation of the district attorney's investigation in 2021 to the present is without precedent. Never before and hopefully never again will our country face circumstances such as these. Pretty cut and dry. And the president obviously weighed in, saying that the whole thing was a witch hunt.
And this represents the dismissal of the last major case against the sitting president of the United States. And what they said when they dismissed this was that essentially between the Supreme Court and the immunity, the extension of immunity now, plus the fact that President Trump wouldn't be out of office until early 2029, that they just didn't think that this was a good use of taxpayer money at this point to continue to prosecute the president as well as these other defendants in the case.
By the way, David Spunt confirming this act of terrorism and how the investigation is moving forward. Expect another news conference tonight. Britt, you know, we've kind of moved on from a number of these legal cases, but it is significant if you think about how much oxygen we've spent covering this case out of Georgia.
Yeah, well, it's all part of the obstacles hurled in the path of Donald Trump as he sought the presidency the first time and then the second time and the third time. And a lot of it has fallen away, and this case certainly deserved to. It was brought by a clownish prosecution team who had a scandal in the middle of the whole case. And I would add to that the fact that the prosecutor that asked for the case now to be dropped made the point that it's not illegal to challenge the results of an election. So it was a misbegotten prosecution from the jump, and there's very little left of the lawfare that was brought against President Trump, and I think that's a good thing.
I want to turn to Ukraine now, Mark, and this is the former NATO commander on Vladimir Putin's territorial ambitions.
He's going to change it back to a Cold War status where he controls all those buffer countries and has this buffer between him and NATO. And so we don't have to guess what his intentions are. He will attempt to reorganize the security situation in Eastern Europe.
He hasn't given up on taking Ukraine, regardless of what he signs. And that's why the security guarantees is so critical to preventing that from happening. It is a deterrent.
As we said last night, the devil's in the details, Mark, as these things get ironed out.
Yeah, Jack Keane is 100% correct. I mean, look, Vladimir Putin can't win this war, but neither can Ukraine. And so you have a stalemate where there's small movement here and there, but lots of people dying. So Donald Trump is 100% correct in trying to bring this war to an end. But the question is, you have to do it in a way that's sustainable, because Vladimir Putin doesn't want to give up. If you think about it, he invaded under Obama, then he stopped under Trump, then he invaded under Biden. Now he may stop under Trump. As soon as Trump is gone, he's going to start again. And so you have to have a security guarantees and security enablers, weapons for the Ukrainians, to make sure that they have a military that is strong enough and borders that are defensible enough that this agreement will last long after Donald Trump has left office. And that's the big challenge going forward.
Well, we'll watch it all. Next week's a big week as far as those meetings. Panel, thanks. Happy Thanksgiving to you all.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.